and welcome to Character Creation Hour, which is a thing that I'm trying to make be a thing. So this is the third week of doing it, and I'm already breaking format because today, instead of making a character for an RPG, I'm actually going to be running through my prep for tomorrow's session of So Many Levels, which is the long-running D&D campaign that I've been doing on Wednesdays for quite a while now. And in fact, as you can see from my screen here, I'm prepping episode 91 of this particular saga. However, this is a different sort of session than usual because several of our usual players are not available. And so, generally speaking, what I've done in this campaign, whenever I'm in that position, when I don't have everybody and it feels like it would be awkward to try to come up with a canon reason for those characters to not be there. It happens sometimes, but you got to do what you can, right, to keep the game going. So sometimes what I've taken to doing is creating a special one-shot that is meant to take place in the same world, in the same general time frame that the main campaign is happening in, but to kind of showcase what's going on in other parts of the world, or sometimes to follow up on a location after the party has left it, and that sort of thing. So, before we really get into the meat of it, I want to direct your attention below me, right here. This is the cover of Phyllis Esposito, Interdimensional Private Eye, which is my novel. It is now available for pre-order as an ebook on Amazon.com. So I would encourage you to go and check that out. Maybe give it a pre-order if it seems interesting to you. I'm very proud of the story, and I'm, excited to share it with everybody in a more accessible way than how it was originally published, which was as blog posts on my website, because the whole thing was sort of an experiment in writing serial fiction. But in any event, here we go. Okay. I'm just realizing my dashboard is organized a little bit different than I thought, so I almost didn't see where the chat window was. Hello, Smartmaster. So, as I was just saying before my, shameless self-promotion down there, is I need to plan a special one-shot. And I wanted it to be in the same setting as the main campaign, but it's an all different party. So the players who are able to make it are all going to be playing different characters. And I've done this a number of times throughout the campaign, and it's always been a lot of fun. And certainly when I gave the players who were going to be able to play tomorrow a list of choices, like there's different games we could play, a couple other things we could do, everyone voted for an in-canon one-shot. So that means I have to create one. So here we go. So really all I have so far is the general, high concept of it. And I haven't written it here because what I've started with here is only what I've told the party, the players so far, is that I wanted them to all make level 5 wood elves that are part of a hunting and security team. And so I decided that this is a part of the world that has been referenced in the story, but has not really been explored very much. And part of it is because this particular sort of culture of wood elves is kind of isolationist. They don't interact much with the outside world. And so the party could have gone there at many different points, but just didn't. They went other places instead. So I thought we'd explore that a little bit. But what's going on in the larger campaign right now is that the multiverse is fracturing. So there are rifts in space to other planes and other times all over the place. And so it's no good. It's basically a big headache for a lot of people. So I wanted to explore a little bit one of the ways that threat presents in this location. And so I have the basic concept of this. Wood elves, as part of this particular culture, have a rite of passage where they go into the deep old part of the woods and must make peace with the spirits there. And so obviously I'm evoking a little bit some of the, like the Native American Vision Quest, but I'm not really basing it on that. I don't want to be appropriating any actual practices. This is something where in the world that this setting, we have spirits are factually real, and there's no question about it. You can talk to them, you can see them, sometimes they bite you, that sort of thing. But in this context, the idea is this: they need the spirits in this part of the forest are not necessarily friendly, and so it is part of this rite of adulthood for these elves to be able to go and be at peace with the spirits that govern the forest where the elves all live. In the chat, Smartermaster asks, is it at all close to the area where they faced the Shambling Mount? And this was, just way back when, but Smartermaster is, OG on this campaign, so he remembers all the way back then. Actually, no. On that note, let me go ahead and bring up the continent map just to illustrate kind of what we're looking at here. It's going to take a little while to load because Windows' photo app just takes a long time to load for reasons that are not at all clear. So yeah, just very slow loading app. I really should tell it to do a different one. So this is the continent map of Sekamian, and so a lot of the early part of the campaign all took part in this part of the world, and so we did have the party interact with some wood elves in a forest on their way somewhere, and that was when they were traveling from Villa Nocta into the Barrier Mountains to the east here, and it was a tribe of, it's a community of wood elves that lived in that forest, but that's actually not the ones that we're exploring here. Instead, we're exploring the ones that are in this deeper, older part of this forest here. This is actually the area that Melicanth originally comes from, although I'm not exploring that so much today. Melicanth, if you haven't been watching the campaign, is sort of the advisor character, NPC for the party. Was the one who kind of gave them the original lowdown on what's going on with the universe and is trying to help them save the universe, but sometimes they don't always get along, which has actually been a really interesting source of friction for the game. Friction in like a good way, because sometimes things don't go the way you expect, and the wise mentor character, yes, powerful wizard, the party just arbitrarily decides they don't trust her and they don't like her, so sometimes it's only part of the party that decides that. But in any event, so it's actually this part of the world that we're looking to, explore right here. So I'm going to briefly tell my players that if you are watching this, don't watch the rest of this, because it will spoil all the surprises. So, but for everyone else, even if you plan to watch tomorrow, I would, you can check and see how I prep and then how it plays out. And I think that's kind of interesting, but I don't want the players to know. So the high concept that I have here is that the party will be asked to follow up on they have all done their rite of passage a long time ago, but the most recent group of young elves who have gone to undertake this mission did so knowing that the world is more fraught than it has been in a long time. The spirits are, anxious and sort of wound up, and so it was potentially more dangerous, but the short answer is that while sometimes individuals don't return, this time none of them have returned, and that's worrying. So our party will be asked to essentially try to find out what happened. But what they are going to encounter is that a massive rift has opened, this time not just to another plane, but actually to another time, a much more ancient time in which now essentially an ancient civilization of Yuan-Ti have now been brought essentially into this modern, more, modern forest. And so I've wanted to use Yuan-ti for quite a while, and I like the idea that they were this sort of ancient civilization that has long since passed, but now they've been sort of brought forward again, and they're trying to renew their own sort of spiritual energy. And so the party will discover that the young elves that they are seeking out have been captured by these Yuan-ti and are potentially in danger of sacrifice, and or one of the interesting creepy things about Yuan-ti is that they can actually be made. They can reproduce, but what they also do is convert other humanoids into Yuan-ti through a special ceremony. And sometimes they convert them fully into full regular Yuan-ti, and sometimes they just convert them into these creepy sort of semi-sentient brood guard things that are all very creepy. And so obviously the party doesn't want that to happen. So they will be presented with a tiered goal, which I think is always good for a one-shot. And what I mean by that is that the primary objective is to rescue their fellows and escape safely, right? But it would also be good if they could disrupt the plans of these Yuan-ti and perhaps even defeat them, because I'm definitely going to be suggesting in there that the Yuan-ti have greater ambitions, and if left to their own devices, they're just going to become a bigger problem. But perhaps they are too much for our party to deal with on their own. So does the party decide to risk themselves to try to stop the Yuan-ti now, or do they accept the lesser victory of just rescuing their compatriots and escaping to tell the tale? And so that's where we go. Smarter Master is saying, yeah, once the heroes do their thing, the world is still going to be messed up. Yeah. I'm actually building to something with that I'm not going to go into too much because it's still very much developing. But, the long arc of the story, it's good to have ideas, but it's not good to be too fixated on a specific outcome, because you never know when the party's going to take a left turn and disrupt all your plans. But so, let's talk about high concept. Latest group of young elves has been kidnapped by a civilization of Yuan-ti, brought into the present through a rift in time and space. Goals. So goals 1 is rescue typing the elves, and 2, disrupt the Yuan-ti's plans. So this is a one-shot, not a larger adventure where we are going to do, 3 or 4 sessions of this. So I want to be careful not to over-prepare, which is something that I definitely ran into a lot early on, which is to say, planning for a one-shot, and then I end up preparing enough stuff that could last 7 or 8 sessions. Because until you've done it a fair amount, it's hard to know how long it takes to go through various things. And so generally, in my experience, for a session of the length that we usually do on So Many Levels, which is around 3 hours plus, but that's around there, generally speaking, we're only going to have time for one really big encounter, or 2 sort of medium-sized encounters, maybe 3 if one of them is like really smallish. So I don't want to plan too many different things. So we want to have, basic, in terms of combat encounters, we're going to have a couple of different ones on the table, but we also have to remember that, we don't know for sure how, so because of this sort of tiered structure, why is my numbers are very small because not changing with the font size. But so if the party decides that just rescuing their fellow elves is enough and then they want to escape with their lives, they may not have the boss fight encounter, and I could force that to happen, but I don't know that if I really want to do that. So I think what I would probably do is, if the decision seems to be made among the party that they just want to try to escape, then instead of just forcing them to have the same combat encounter that they would have if they wanted to defeat the Yuan-Ti's plans, instead I think I would want to turn that into like an escape chase skill challenge sort of thing. But I think what we're going to be starting with, obviously, is the party is tracking, right? They're tracking the elves. And so the first encounter, where I changed my window here. First encounter is going to be, there we go. First encounter is going to be Yuan-Ti scouting party. And so this is going to be one where if the party gets into combat, I would want it to be over pretty quickly. Like, no more than 2 rounds max. And probably faster than that, because I want it to be just maybe 2 or 3. It's going to be getting through them pretty fast, because all I want to do is introduce something slightly creepy and give the, basically foreshadow some of what the party is going to encounter. So I want them to get a little bit of a hint of what's coming up, have a lead, perhaps a trail to follow back to where the rest of the adventure will take place, and then also just perhaps if they decide to try to listen in, perhaps the Yuan-Ti are talking amongst themselves about their big plans, and so if the party gets to be sneaky and listen in a little bit before they attack, maybe they gain some extra information. So one of the tools that I've made a lot of use of in planning D&D is Kobold Fight Club, which is just at kobold.club/fight. And it's this great encounter builder, and it has a lot of other features that I haven't played around with too much yet. But mostly what you can do is you can say, we're going to have, I'm guessing, 4 players that are level 5. And then you can search various enemies here, and it'll give you the math according to the player's handbook and Dungeon Master's Guide of, how tough of an encounter is that. And so I think because I would want this scouting party thing to just be a story point and not a real substantial combat challenge, I want it to go pretty quickly. I'm probably wanting it to be an easy challenge. And so the other thing to keep in mind, though, is all of these combat ratings and the amount of experience in this easy, medium, hard, deadly is all based on this premise that the average party should be having like 4 to 6 combat encounters per day. And in my own games, at least, I find that's way more than they usually have. Somewhat like some of the other streamed games, I find that the way the story kind of breaks down is usually there's sort of one big encounter per session, and I don't have them having multiple smaller encounters every single day, and that really disrupts the balance. And so if you're only going to be playing a game where the party only really has one big fight per day, you're going to find that even fights that it says are deadly your party's just going to chew right through it, because they have all of their resources. They haven't been depleted. But in any event, so let's pull up Yuan-ti. Now I've got this set. You can set sources for like what books you have, so that it doesn't suggest monsters that you don't have access to the stat block for. And so these are various types of Yuan-ti, and some of them are coming from the Monster Manual or Volo's Guide to Monsters, Tomb of Annihilation, and so on. But so we can see by the combat rating, there's lots of There's got the high level ones. The Anathema is the big. I feel like the Anathema is probably too tough for this party, right? Like if we were to look at this encounter here, not only is it deadly, but it's deadly by double, right? 8,400 compared to 4,400 here. I don't know, this might be too small for you to easily read on the stream, but what we can see is that just fighting one of those might be too much, especially if there are other support creatures for it. But what that means is that it could be a cool idea of that's what the Yuan-ti are trying to do, is to create a Yuan-ti anathema. And so the goal to disrupt their plans would be to stop that from happening. But if they fail to stop it from happening, that's the thing that you say, oh no, we're too late, run away. And I think that's kind of a cool idea. But so we're still trying to say what's our scouting party. So we got the Yuan-ti Purebloods, which are the ones that they have some sort of basic, like they have magic resistance, they have some like poison spray cantrips, and so a few stats like that, which we can pull up and look up here in a moment. Let's see, I've got D&D Beyond here. So the two lowest challenge rating Yuan-ti characters though are the Pureblood and the Broodguard. And so the Pureblood, as I mentioned, the Purebloods are like your standard garden variety Yuan-ti. They look vaguely human, but tend to have some slightly snake-like features. But mostly they're just going to be, their weapon attacks are just weapon-based, melee weapons. They can cast Animal Friendship on snakes only. They have Poison Spray and Suggestion. They have Magic Resistance. They are immune to poison. So that's their, so nothing fancy there. But what that could potentially be used for is it doesn't give away the game right away, right? So if they see some of those, it's not obvious what's happening necessarily yet. Meanwhile, the Broodguard is, as I mentioned, this is like when they decide to take a slave and make them into sort of a monster instead of like a full Yuan-ti. They turn into this sort of reptilian, semi-intelligent sort of thing that uses bites and claws. And let's see, it can reckless at the start of its turn and gains advantage on all melee weapon attacks. It's kind of like the barbarian quality. It has mental resistance. It has advantage on saving throws against being charmed. It's kind of like a barbarian Yuan-ti. So, and if we want an easy encounter for the party, if we notice, if we've got one of each here, that's still only 975 for this adjusted XP, whereas for our party, we would need 1,000 even to qualify as an easy. So we probably want more than that. So what I think maybe makes good sense is if they've got one Broodguard and maybe a couple of Purebloods. So maybe 2 or 3. And so if we have 3 of them, it bumps us up to medium. But if they're fresh out of the gate, they're probably going to deal with a medium pretty quickly, especially if it's sort of a combat optional encounter, right? They might decide not to fight the scouting party at all, but just follow them, right? But so if we look at, the 3 Purebloods and a Broodguard, we could portray that scouting party as what seem like maybe humans, but there's just something a little bit off about them. And in the setting, I'm thinking this is an ancient civilization, so nobody knows what Yuan-ti are. This is not something that the characters in the story would be familiar with. So what they see is some humans that seem strangely off somehow, and they've got this weird lizard-like creature, on like sort of a leash that's following them around like it's like a dog or something. The language is a good question. Per the handbook here, they speak Abyssal, Common, and Draconic. What I'm actually thinking is that they will speak Common more or less, but I'll convey to the characters that it seems like a much older sort of variant of Common. Like they can sort of get the gist of it, but it's a little bit like if you were hearing someone like read from Chaucer, right? It's words that you can understand, but by and large it's very archaic sounding dialect and construction and grammar. And I think that's kind of what I like the idea of. That way we can have the characters be able to listen in and kind of get a gist of it, but we again get to convey something as being a little bit off. So let's go ahead and put this here. So 3 purebloods, 1 broodguard. So I'll roll. So they're scouting, but they're not necessarily being stealthy because they're exploring. They don't specifically know that there's something that they should be hiding from. So I'm going to have the party. They're all wood elves. Some of them are going to have good perception. So I think I'll probably just this is a little DM trick. Without actually setting a difficulty, what I'll just do is I will have them make their way into the jungle, and at some point I'll say, hey, make a perception check, and whoever gets the highest one, I'll say they hear something. Unless, of course, they all roll crazy low for some reason, in which case I might have them get surprised. That could be fun, too. But so they're going through the party. Party rolls. Perception, highest result. Here's scouting. Here's Yuan-Ti coming. They are speaking archaic dialect of Common and talking about their ability to type, their new captives, and their big plans to summon an anathema. And so the party will then, if they have taken the opportunity to try to listen in and get a sense of what's happening, they can then get a little bit of a sense of, that's probably what happened to the elves we're looking for, so we got to rescue them if they're prisoners somewhere, right? But also, what does it mean? They want to summon, or not summon, I should say, create, because that's how this works in the Yuan-Ti lore. So, create an anathema. It is basically, they will probably have, the next level down from an anathema is an abomination. So I'd say they probably have an abomination there that is their leader, which is the one that has been most blessed by their dark serpent god by being given this very snake-like form. But an anathema would be like the next level up, and so I think that the goal would be that the abomination is commanding the others to find sacrifices to help it achieve anathema status. But the party will hear, that's where our friends are, we need to go rescue them. But what does that mean? They want to create an anathema? They seem to like it, and it sounds like something we're not going to like, but what does it mean? And having that mystery. So the party, party can choose to fight or not, try to sneak by or not. then either follow scouts back to temple or follow their trail. And so that's what will get the party to the temple. Now, in the Volo's Guide to Monsters, which is where a lot of the modern lore of Yuan-ti, they cover a lot of that in here. Yuan-ti, snake people, they have a great map of sort of old Aztec temple looking temple. Where was that? Yeah, Yuan-ti cities. There we go. So they have a map of a great temple, and so I think that seems great to me. I'm just going to use that map for sure. And so if we look at this map here, we've got what the side level looks like with the different layers. We've got the entrances, sort of a temple level, and then each level going up. And so I think that the idea will be that so encounter 2 will be sneaking into the temple to find the prisoners. And so that will be require them either to be, so party will either need to be super clever, sneaky, or fight their way in. And then, of course, always possibility of sneaking halfway in, getting discovered, and then fighting. So if I look at this map, let's zoom in on it a little bit here. If we look at our map here, we have this lowest level, and it has a shrine here, kitchen, a bathroom. I'm just realizing the entrances are. You know what? I'm just realizing this is kind of interesting that if you look at these stairs, the stairs go up to the top. And so the top has just this big altar on it. And then you have the entrances, all of the entrances other than just going to the top with the stairs are these secret doors. So party will have to discover the secret doors, entrances, either by finding them or seeing other Yuan-ti use them. Right? So on this first level, we've got secret doors here and here. There's a little guard station here and there. So we can imagine that being a tricky thing to get past, right? Or, you got to take the guard out quickly before he can alert others. There's a bath, there's a temple, cultist quarters. I feel like we might just say maybe one of those has a Yuan-ti pureblood hiding. And I think that each of these guard stations. So let's go ahead and map. So level 1, one pureblood in each guard station. one in lower left cultist chamber. All right, so they can explore this room here, but then there are stairs to go up to the next level, which is here. And so we see that in this one, we have a level that's a torture chamber, a place where the slave master is, armory and smithy, kitchen, storeroom, shrine, egg chamber, heat room, heated bath, pure blood chambers, and then slave pens, right? So slave pens, obviously, that's where the captives are going to be, right? So let's say, level 2, slave, elf captives in slave pens area. We're going to have, one of the things that I think I'm going to briefly, let me just go back up before our encounters here, set up. Party will each describe they each describe their character, one thing they know about another party member, and describe one of the missing elves. And that's how we'll populate the party and give everyone a connection to the elves that are missing. And so I think we have to say all but one. Right? And so we might have to just decide in the course of play which one it seems like it would be the most fun to have be missing, right? And so once we have, a sense of maybe which of these young elves it would be sort of the most heart-wrenching to say, oh no, where's that one, right? Where are they? And I think that the remaining ones say he was taken kicking and screaming upstairs, and the UT were saying they were going to bless him or have bless him with the venom of the serpent, the great serpent. Might have that be a placeholder name if I think of something better. Let's highlight that. Yeah, and so what that means is, most fun, most painful, for sure. It's stakes, right? It's storytelling stakes, emotional stakes that makes the party motivated. Because where they're at right now is if they have snuck their way in to the temple, and I'm thinking I'm making it not too hard to do that, right? Because I want them to get to this point, right? I want to have a fun challenge for the party. I don't want them to lose, because that's not actually fun. If they lose in a one shot, you want them to lose only at the end. You don't want them to lose halfway through. So, because losing at the end can actually be fun, especially when it is a one shot and no one's as invested. But when we get them here, and I'm hoping that I would get them to this point somewhere around halfway through the session. Because where they're at right now is we have snuck in, we have rescued most of the people we came for. Possibly what we could do is try to sneak back out and escape, but then that leaves, not only does that leave one person behind, but also they don't really know yet. They don't really understand yet what the Yuan-Ti are doing. And so I think that maybe I like the idea that these two lower levels are mostly empty right now because a big ritual is going on, right? So maybe that's why it's a little bit easier to sneak into these two areas. But I think we probably want to have at least one, so we got Slave Master on here on the map. I think that makes sense, is that there's at least one guy there to be guarding, at least one. But maybe we've had them fight some, Brood Guards and Purebloods already. So let's bump it up. So how about a Malison? This is one of the tougher ones. But one Malison. But then maybe what we got here is we got a Mind Whisperer, a Nightmare Speaker. And so, or a Pitmaster. Pitmaster is interesting. So let's look at what those look like. What are those, right? So let's see. Mind Whisperer. Ooh, that's a pretty creepy looking guy, right? He does Mind Fangs, does extra psychic damage. He can cast some spells, and he bites and uses a scimitar. He can change into a big snake. Okay. A lot of them can change into a big snake. That's definitely a Yuan-Ti thing. The Malison, there's actually several types of them. And so, like, the Yuan-Ti Type 3 has, this, let's see. Where is the... the way D&D Beyond breaks it down is a little bit more confusing than the way that it is in the book, because it has them separated out like this, but doesn't describe what that shape is. So Type 4, but it just still has the same picture. Yeah, so I feel like you have to... So, in any event, part of the whole deal with the Malison is that there's lots of variations. You have these guys that look humanoid, except they have a snake head. You have guys that look human, except their arms are snakes, and their hand, instead of hands, they have snake heads. You have guys that look like totally human from the waist up, but from the waist down, they're, got snake body. Yeah, and so, yes, those are, there's definitely good... I knew Dendar. I was just kind of trying to... I don't want to just use Dendar. I might just use Dendar. It might be fine, especially for a one-shot. But, since technically speaking, I'm using a different setting and not the Forgotten Realms, but I'll think about it. Those are good. I mean, those are all cool names, and really the only hesitation I had was that, they're cool enough that it's hard to think of something that sounds better. Anyway, so there's lots of different kinds of Yuan-Ti Malisons, but mostly what they still do is they are just sort of scary looking in their combination human-snake bodies. So what else do we've got? The Nightmare Speaker, their thing is, okay, so, human upper body, lower body snake, kind of like one of the Malisons, but they can do this Invoke Nightmare. Yeah, okay, so they basically, they create a manifestation of one of the target's greatest fears. That's pretty cool. And they can constrict around a person, scimitar. These are pretty cool. They can do some spells. They're basically like a warlock. Where was the Pitmaster? There we go. The Pitmaster. Oh, look at this guy. So like humanoid, except his arms are not, instead of like one big snake, they're like a bunch of little snakes. That's kind of crazy. So they can do spells, using bite attacks with the snake arms, sure. And then Murshawk's Slumber targets up to 5 creatures that it can see within 60 feet. They must make a Constitution saving throw or fall into a magical sleep. That is a really cool ability, but the problem is that my party is all wood elves. So that's going to be a useless ability in this context. And even though I think in a broader campaign it could be interesting to have it be like it makes sense that the slave keeper would be something that has the ability to make slaves fall asleep, and then it's cool that the party is immune to that. But in a one shot, like, all that means is that I've picked a monster whose big thing is useless. So that's not actually fun for anybody. So probably let's not do the Pitmaster. So what was, I think the Mind Whisperer, I think, no, that was, which one was it? It was the Nightmare Speaker. That one has a cool invoke nightmare thing. They have to make a DC 13 intelligence saving throw, and it can only do it once. So there's a fairly good chance that no one will actually, no one will actually see that happen. But it would be very cool if it did. So I think maybe one of the, and they can also do, let's see, Arms of Hadar, Darkness, Fear, Hold Person, Hunger of Hadar. Yeah, so those are pretty good. Those are pretty good. So what if we have one of those, like a Nightmare Speaker and one Malison on that level with them, and that's our, our medium, like, encounter. Like, to rescue those, most of the elves, that's what they have to beat. Level, whoops. Let's see. On this level, there is a Nightmare and a Malison. We want to pick a Malison type though, and so I think, you know what? I actually had the books out earlier, the actual hard copy books here. So let's just pull it up here, because the D&D Beyond entry just doesn't make it trivial to see the different types. It just isn't formatted that way. So flipping to the end, we got the Malison. Okay, so here's the three types. Type 1 is human body with a snake head, like the picture. Type 2, human head and body with snakes for arms. Type 3, human head and upper body with a serpentine lower body instead of legs. Well, that would be cool, but because we have the Nightmare Speaker who's also shaped like that, we probably want something that's different than that. But Volo's Guide also introduces a Type 4 and a Type 5. So let's so what were those types? Where was that page? I think that page was maybe in the UNT section. Alright. Didn't prepare to be looking through here. Okay, let's look what we've got here. Malison's. I know that there was. Oh, here we are. Types 4 and 5 Malison variants. Type 4 is human form with one or more serpentine tails. And then Type 5, human forms covered in scales. Gosh, I can't help but feel like neither of those seem as cool as any of the original three types. Oh, I see the benefit, though, is that the three, well, no, they're pretty much all kind of equivalent in terms of combat. But so I think in order to contrast the one that, this Nightmare Speaker who's got the human upper body and the lower body of a snake, the one that is human looking but with snake arms, I feel like that's sort of the weirdest, creepiest one. So that one was a Type 2. Yeah. Type 2 Malison. right? So at this point, the party will be aware that the next level up is more populated because a ritual seems to be happening. Which means more danger, but their missing comrade is surely there with a ticking clock. And this is where, even when we want to have, everybody's having fun, right? Like we don't, I don't want to necessarily make this too dark, but there have to be stakes, right? And so I think I need to give the party a chance to stop the ritual and prevent this elf from being transformed into a Yuan-ti. But I think what I need to do is communicate to them at this point that time is a factor. And then if they are not fast enough, they will fail. And they will lose that one remaining, and they will have to witness him or her being turned into a Yuan-ti pureblood. And that will kind of communicate, like that's the whole ritual thing happening. And at this point, I want the, disrupting should feel dangerous, but the only chance to save their friend. And at that point, what we now have is that final choice for the party, which is there some way to try to get your buddy out and escape? Or is this a fight where you're trying to just kill everybody and stop the ritual altogether and disrupt everything that's going on? And I want that to be a tough choice. I want this to feel like a dangerous fight. Like it should be a difficult combat for them if they want to try to just kill everything. But at the same time, I don't want to make it impossible if that is the way they go. I would like them to be challenged but victorious at the end. That's what's most fun for everybody. So what we want is this last encounter to be, we're going to have our abomination there. And if we note, it's a medium all by himself, right? So what we actually might do is have him show up later. Like we've got a bunch of purebloods there. Let's say we got a bunch of purebloods. And note, if I add the 6 Yuan-ti purebloods and the abomination, now this adjusted XP 10,250 as opposed to this deadly target is 4,400, and they might have already had 2 encounters by this point. So that's potentially really tough, right? And so what I might do to make that just a teensy bit easier on them without it becoming too obvious what's happening is that so level 3 ritual taking place in ritual chamber. Duh. Where was that map? Yeah, so we've got this next level up, this gathering hall. So I guess rituals actually shows here on that next level up, that level 4. But I think you know what? I think that the gathering hall, I think they're going to have this whole quarters be sort of creepily abandoned, except one of these abomination quarters has the abomination in it. So, because it's waiting to make its big entrance at the end of the ritual. Let's see. Empty except for abomination in upper left. Abomination quarters. It is waiting to make its grand entrance at the climax of the ritual. Everyone else is upstairs. Level 4. So level 4, we've got, the ritual space. So we see our stairs. The map here is a little bit... Okay, I see. Okay, so the stairs from the gathering hall are coming up here and coming out here. And so the ritual there. So I think... And yeah. So the level 4, 6 pure bloods performing ritual on missing elf. If party takes too long, they arrive just in time to see the ritual be completed. To their horror, and abomination shows up behind them, because of course he will have been coming up from the level below. Now, of course, the way I've set this up, it's possible that if the party is exploring level 3, they may encounter the abomination all by himself, in which case that makes it an easier encounter for them. Maybe they kill the abomination and they have disrupted this abomination, but then they're too late to save their friend. Maybe. So I think that could be interesting. So, but at that point, then it is all about revenge or escape. If party hurries, the ritual is in early stages. And so they can perhaps start a slaughter where they're fighting just the 6 Yuan-Ti purebloods, and the abomination hasn't come up yet because it's not time yet. So we see if they're fighting just the Yuan-Ti purebloods up here by themselves, that's only a medium encounter. But I think the way that would play out is if they start combat before the abomination arrives, it shows up once 3 of them are down. All right. So I think, and then it's then it's all about, like I wrote above, it's all about either finishing the combat or trying to escape from the temple. And they're going to have a whole bunch of issues. I think what we're going to let's see, where was that armory? Armory and smithy is on the same level as the slave pens. So what I'm going to say is the elf captives are all like, I'm trying to think, they're young and they won't have substantial fighting ability yet. So I could make them maybe just like guards, but their weapons, guard NPCs, but their weapons are in the armory room. And so, if they have, you know what, and maybe, guard NPCs don't have many hit points. What is the guard NPC? Guard only they have armor class of 16, but that's when they're wearing chain shirt, hit points 11. That's not the right NPC for this. So weapons, armor. I think, so what that means is that AC is only 11. Unarmed would be, see, what is the, the attack bonus? +3. Attack +3, damage 2. So that is what they will have if they don't retrieve their weapons and armor. And so I want the party, if they decide to recruit their rescued friends as allies to like help in the combat, I want that to be like a dangerous thing. Like they're bringing unprepared, young elves into a very dangerous situation. So I want it to be a circumstance where, maybe they could get a little bit of extra assistance, but only at the price of actually risking their lives. And so, I want this all to kind of feel pretty desperate at the end. And so we'll see how it all plays out. But I think I've got the basics of it now. And so now it's really just kind of about, adding the flavor text here and there. And of course, as always, anytime you're preparing to DM anything, you have to be 100% on board and okay with the fact that I might have to just throw all of this out because the party just decides to do something else entirely. They decide to ally with the Yuan-Ti. They think they're really cool. They want to join up. Wouldn't it be cool? Hey, Yuan-Ti, you should make us into Yuan-Ti. We're on board. Like, they might decide to do that for all I know. And so, got to be able to roll with those things. But in the meantime, I've got the one shot prepared. I've got, almost everything I need ready for tomorrow. And so thanks for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. And maybe if you weren't already planning to, check out on Wednesday night. We're going to run so many levels, and that's when I'll run this adventure that we just prepared tonight. And I would say even odds that we won't be very far along halfway through, and I'll have to accelerate some of this by the end. But always better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. And, well, I don't know that that's always true. Often it's true. Anyway, just as a reminder, Phyllis Esposito, Interdimensional Private Eye. If you go to ChristianaEllis.com, you'll see a post about where the ebook is now available for pre-order. So check that out. It's an awesome detective story about parallel universes and magic and corrupted artificial intelligences. It's very cool. I'm very proud of it. Check it out. And so in the meantime, I will go ahead and leave it there. But I'll be back tomorrow for so many levels, and next week for more of Character Creation Hour. Maybe we'll get back to actually creating characters. We'll see.